The Trail That Doesn't Forgive. Chapter 1. The Town at the Edge of the Forest. The town of Black Pines was a quiet place, nestled deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, where the streets were lined with old wooden houses, and where the air always carried the scent of pine and damp earth. The forest surrounded the town like a living wall, its trees towering and ancient, their branches whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. But there was one secret the forest kept closely guarded, a trail that led into its heart. The locals called it by many names: the Wishmaker's Path, the Trail of Shadows, or simply the Forbidden Trail. It was said that the trail appeared only to those who sought it, and that it led to a place where desires could be fulfilled. But the price for such a gift was steep, and those who returned were never the same. Old Henry was the town's most experienced woodsman. He had spent his entire life in the forest, hunting, tracking, and surviving where others would have been lost. But there was one thing: Henry never spoke of the trail. Even when the men gathered at the local tavern, swapping stories of strange lights and eerie sounds in the woods, Henry remained silent. His eyes would darken, and he would stare into the distance, as if remembering something he wished he could forget. One evening, as the townsfolk gathered around a crackling campfire, Henry broke his silence. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that silenced everyone around him. "You've all heard of the trail," he began, "but none of you know what it truly is. I've been there, and I'll tell you what I saw." Chapter 2. The Forbidden Path. Henry paused, his eyes fixed on the flames. The fire crackled, casting long shadows that danced on the faces of the listeners. The wind, which had been still all evening, suddenly picked up, rustling the leaves as if warning them to stop. "Many years ago," Henry continued, "I was young and foolish. I thought the forest was my friend, that it would always protect me. But there are places where friendship ends. One day, I decided to take that trail. I'd heard the stories, but I didn't believe them. I thought they were just tales to scare children." He stopped again, his gaze distant, as if he were reliving that day. "I walked for hours. The forest grew denser, the air heavier. At some point, I realized I couldn't hear a thing. No wind, no animals, not even my own footsteps. Just silence. And then I saw it." "What?" Someone in the crowd couldn't help but ask. "The trail. It was narrow, barely visible, but I knew it was the one. I followed it, and with every step I felt something pressing down on me, as if the forest itself was trying to stop me. But I kept going, and then I saw it." Chapter 3. The Clearing. The clearing was unlike anything Henry had ever seen. The trees here were ancient, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching upward like skeletal fingers. In the center of the clearing stood a tree so massive that its top disappeared into the sky. Its bark was covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Henry approached the tree, his heart pounding in his chest. As he got closer, he heard a voice. It was soft but clear, as if it were speaking directly into his mind. "What do you desire?" the voice asked. Henry hesitated. He had come here seeking adventure, but now he felt a deep, primal fear. "Still," he answered. "I want wealth," he said. The voice replied, "Take a leaf from this tree, but remember all things come at a cost." Henry reached out and plucked a leaf. It was cold like ice, and seemed to pulse faintly in his hand. He put it in his pocket and turned to leave. But as he walked away, he felt a strange sensation, as if something had been taken from him. Chapter 4. The Price. When Henry returned to town, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. The people he passed on the street stared at him with wide eyes, and when he caught his reflection in a window, he understood why. He had aged. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with wrinkles. 10 years of his life had been taken from him. Desperate, Henry returned to the clearing the next day. He shouted at the tree, demanding answers. But the voice only said, "You got what you wanted, but you never asked what it would cost." Henry threw the leaf to the ground and left. He never set foot on the trail again. But sometimes, at night, he would hear the forest calling him back. Chapter 5. The Town's Curse. After Henry's return, strange things began to happen in Black Pines. The crops that had once flourished now withered in the fields, their leaves turning black as if burned by an unseen fire. Livestock disappeared overnight, leaving behind only strange, clawed footprints in the mud. And at night, the townsfolk reported hearing whispers in the wind, voices that called their names from the depths of the forest. Henry knew it was his fault. The leaf he had taken from the tree had upset some ancient balance, and now the forest was demanding payment. He tried to warn the others, but they were too frightened to listen. Some even blamed him for the curse, saying he had brought the forest's wrath upon them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a young man named Thomas approached Henry. Thomas was in his early 20s, with a restless spirit and a hunger for adventure. He had always been fascinated by the stories of the trail, and now, with the town in chaos, he saw his chance to prove himself. "I'm going to find that tree," Thomas said, his eyes burning with determination. "I'll make things right." Henry shook his head. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. That tree, it doesn't give, it takes, and it won't stop until it's taken everything." But Thomas wouldn't listen. He packed a bag with supplies and set off into the forest, following the same trail Henry had taken years before. Chapter 6. The Seeker's Journey. Thomas's journey was fraught with danger from the start. The forest seemed alive, its branches twisting to block his path, its shadows shifting to confuse him. He heard voices calling his name, but when he turned, there was no one there. The air grew colder with every step, and the silence became oppressive. After hours of walking, Thomas reached the clearing. The massive tree stood in the center, its symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. He approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you desire?" the voice asked, just as it had with Henry. Thomas hesitated. He had come here to save the town, but now he felt a deep, primal fear. "Still," he answered, "I want to undo what Henry did. I want to lift the curse." The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering his request. Then it spoke again. "Take a leaf from this tree, but remember all things come at a cost." Thomas reached out and plucked a leaf. It was cold, like ice, and seemed to pulse faintly in his hand. But as he turned to leave, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He stumbled, clutching at his heart, and fell to the ground. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. Back in Black Pines, Henry felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. He knew something had gone wrong. Grabbing his coat, he ran into the forest, following the trail he had sworn never to take again. When he reached the clearing, he found Thomas lying on the ground, his face pale and his breathing shallow. The leaf he had taken was clutched in his hand, its glow fading. "Thomas!" Henry shouted, rushing to his side. "What have you done?" Thomas looked up at him, his eyes filled with pain. "I tried to fix it, but the tree, it took my life." Henry's heart sank. He knew what he had to do. He stood and approached the tree, his hands trembling. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "Take me instead. Let the boy live, and let the town be free." The voice spoke again, softer this time. "You understand the price?" "I do," Henry replied. There was a moment of silence, and then the symbols on the tree began to glow brighter. Henry felt a sharp pain in his chest, just as Thomas had, but he didn't fight it. He closed his eyes and let the forest take him. Epilogue. The forest's silence. When Thomas woke, he was back in Black Pines. The curse had been lifted, the crops were growing again, the livestock had returned, and the whispers in the wind were gone. But Henry was nowhere to be found. The townsfolk never spoke of what had happened, but they knew the truth. The forest had taken Henry, just as it had taken others before him. And though the trail still existed, hidden deep within the trees, no one dared to seek it out. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind rustled through the pines, the people of Black Pines would hear a faint voice, calling from the depths of the forest. It was a reminder that the trail was still there, waiting for the next foolhardy soul to take its first step. And the forest, as always, was listening. Remember, the forest is always listening. And who knows, maybe next time, the trail will appear right in front of you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the new mysteries hidden in the shadows of the woods. And for now, be careful. After all, wishes do come true, but the price might be too high to pay. Until we meet again by the next campfire.